Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Crochet. My name is Cora and today I'm going to walk you through the process of making a finger crochet scarf or necklace, depending on how you'd like to wear it. I'm using this ribbon ruffle yarn today. This is the stuff that you commonly see. It was really popular to make scarves out of. Has kind of this ruffly effect when you crochet or knit it up well. But today we're actually going to use it and keep it closed because I want this really thick, chunky look to what I'm making. But you can use just about any kind of yarn. The style is going to vary a little bit depending on the thickness, so I do recommend something a little thicker. But you can get the same effect with what we're doing with regular worsted weight or any other kind of yarn. It's just going to take you a little bit longer and a lot more rows and rounds. And I'm all for making projects quick and simply, which is one of the reasons I love doing the bulkier weight yarns, because they work up a lot faster and then you can be finished much more quickly. And I just don't have the patience really to spend 4 hours on a project. So we're using this yarn. I have just one skein of it. That's going to be plenty for my purposes, but again, once you've completed, if you decide that you want something even thicker or want more rows around, you can certainly add on at any point in time. So we're not using any other equipment, just our yarn in our hands. We're going to start by making a simple slip knot. Many different ways to make this. I think my years of property management and tying balloons has kind of leaned me a little bit more towards this particular method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drape the end of my yarn over my fingers so it's facing away from me. Now they're both just hanging down, and I take my fingers, I'm going to twist them over the top and loop my yarn through. This way I've got a nice slip knot. This part is the tight knot part, and then this is the part that's a little more moving. However, for this particular crochet method, it really doesn't matter which one ends up being which, as long as you have a little slip knot here to start with. I know a lot of people who like to also lay it down on the ground, make your 4, and then either tuck this through or the reverse. But again, I've tied so many hundreds of balloons in my lifetime now that just kind of comes naturally to me. This is a lot easier to tie than balloons though, because it's not stretchy. So our technique today is going to be pretty simple. We have this nice little loop here. We're just going to be reaching through our loop, grabbing our long end that's connected to our skein, and pulling it through, and then repeating, reaching through our loop, grabbing that long skein, pulling it through. Now here's where you have a little bit of decision power. Depending on how tightly you want to pull it is how tightly your stitch is going to be. So you can absolutely leave it nice and loose like this. It's going to give you some fun texture when you're all done having these little holes. But if you want something that's a little bit tighter together, you just pull on that slip piece until you get the tightness that you want. So if you're looking for something that's more of a little of a chain or a rope, so you can see that's a lot more narrow. And that will give you some fun texture as well without the holes. So it's really up to you. The one thing you do want to be important of is what's called gauge. So you want to try to make sure that all of your stitches are the same size. Otherwise, you don't want to pull the first 4 nice and tight and then leave the next ones nice and loose. You'll end up with a really uneven creation by the time you're all done, and you're just not going to be as pleased with how it looks. So we're just going to continue to do this pretty much until we get to the very end of the skein of yarn, or however long that you want your necklace slash scarf slash belt slash whatever else you decide you want to use it for complete. Okay, so once you've gotten through however much of your skein or skeins as you want, I went ahead and did the entire skein, and I've got about 2 feet left here before I reach the end. You're going to want to fasten it off. Now, you don't necessarily have to leave 2 feet depending on what you plan on doing it. If you want to just leave it as a long rope that you can wrap around and tie off as you'd like, then you probably only need to leave about 6 or 8 inches. But I'm going to actually wrap around and make a fun little closure. So for your very last stitch, as you pull it through, you're going to want to just pull all the way through, and that's going to keep your crochet from getting snagged, hopefully not on your finger like that, and unraveling, and pull it nice and tight so you've got that knot at the end. Now comes the hard decision time for you of what you are planning on doing with your really long, for my case here, chain of crocheted scarf slash necklace slash belt slash lasso slash cat toy in my house, as pretty much everything that is in my house actually is, especially if you ask them. So you've got a lot of options for finishing this. Again, if you want to make it a little more versatile, you can actually just leave it as it is. And then as you decide things that you want to do, you can just tie it off wherever you want. So you can make it into a belt, wrap it around for a necklace, etc., etc., etc. For me, what I want to do is actually create kind of a multi-layered necklace look for this. That chunky thing seems to be in, and it's a very nice way to hide shirts and stuff like that if you've got a plainer neck collared shirt. Also gets you out of trouble with the boss if your shirt ends up being a little lower than you realized it was when you went to work because you hadn't had your coffee when you got dressed. So I'm going to wrap it around and kind of figure out exactly what lengths you want. You can make them all the same length if you'd like, or if you want a little bit more depth to it, make one a little smaller than the other. The important thing is that you make sure that it's still big enough to get around your head. I have done that before I wanted something that was nice and tight and short, and then I couldn't actually get it on. So I'm kind of liking this. I've got my 3 layers around here. I've got my 2 ends pretty close together. I think this is the look I'm going to go for with my super chunky necklace here. With all of this extra that I have, what I'm going to do is actually just wrap it around a couple of times, and that's going to not only provide security for the whole thing to stay together, but it'll also allow me to adjust things as it's on so that if when I put it on I want one to be a little longer, I can kind of pull and yank around and still create some adjustment. If you don't want that and you want it all to be secure, you can actually weave this end through some of the loops of your other rows, and that will create that knot right in the top so that it's not going to be adjustable. But I want this one to be adjustable. So I'm going to take my long piece here, and I'm just going to, first of all, tie it to the beginning of my other piece so that if I do pull on it, it doesn't come flying through. I'm just going to tuck it through one of the loops here. So we've got it all together. I just realized I probably couldn't see that very well. So I tucked it through one of the loops of my starting ends, and I'm going to pull it until those 2 pieces meet, but not pull through. And I'm going to take this long piece and just wrap it around. Let's see here. 1, 2. Okay, I probably didn't need quite this long of a tail, but I was just being extra zealous. 3, 4, and 5. So now I have this little bundle here of all of the rows. And as I said, also now you can also pull them through and adjust them. If you want to make one a little bit longer, one a little bit shorter, you have that option and flexibility. So I've got my 2 pieces here. I'm going to tie my 2 ends together just in a nice square knot. Thank you, Girl Scouts. Right over left, take it through, left over right, pull it through. Voila, tied. Grab some scissors here. You can just trim off those little pieces. And again, there you go, instant cat toy. They get something out of this project as well. I'm not going to trim them all the way to the knot because I'm always a little nervous that the knot's going to untie itself through use. So I'm just going to trim it, and then I'm going to tuck it in so that they're not staying out. Now, if you want to make sure that that knot stays hidden for the rest of its life, you can always put a little dot of glue. Just make sure that you are using a glue that is actually machine washable. So not hot glue. Hot glue in washing machines does not mix. Yes, I know this from personal experience. And voila, there you have your fun little triple chain necklace or chunky scarf. Again, if you left it untied, you could also use it as a belt. One other fun variation that you can do with this exact same technique is actually attach it throughout. So I still have my 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, but what I did was every 5th step, or every 5th stitch that I did, I attached it to the other row. So I started with just one time around until I got the length that I wanted, and then I secured it shut. Then as I was going the next time around, every 5th stitch, I would pull it through here as well. So then you have these nice little, see, here's my starting area, nice little ladder almost of stitches. And again, it gives a little bit more texture, a little bit more fun. It doesn't allow for any sort of change in the length, but just another fun little variation using the exact same technique that you can play around with. There's many other ways to do this. Again, you can use the thinner weight yarn and do the exact same thing. You just end up with a much smaller chain, so there you could do 10 or 15 around to have a fun little scarf or necklace too. I hope you enjoy!